Should I start? My name is Thorsten S. Wiedemann. I'm founder and festival director of Amaze Berlin, and also I run the company Amaze.
I'm Matt Löwenotter. I'm a playful and action designer in Berlin. Play crazy amount of games. I love creative freedom. So into VR labs, and the connection between humans is something which drives me a lot, and that's why I love to do a lot of work in a maze with art and expression to get the award together, but also some other things where I work with young kids and or young adults and kids.
That was Thorsten Wiedemann and Matt Löwenotter, respectively the founder and artistic director, and the award curator and community manager for Amaze. We're talking today to talk about that. About Amaze, the thing that they run. Established in 2008, and according to their website, Amaze is, quote, an international art house label for games and playful media, including independent and alternative game projects, virtual realities, and other digital playful work. Amaze's mission is to represent the current experimental and artistic movement of thoughtful and reflective content in playful content, games, virtual reality, and playful media, end quote. Specifically, we are going to be talking about Amaze Berlin, the 3-day games festival that they put on between May 13th and 16th of 2026. Again, according to their website, Amaze Berlin is, quote, a platform for independent and art house games and explores the world and culture of playful media, end quote. It is a playground. It is a showcase. It is a forum for discussion, talks, and a boundaries-free celebration of creativity in the digital arts. It also holds its own awards ceremony, the Amaze Awards, that seeks to recognise the works that most profoundly embody that spirit, the games or other digital experiences that inform, educate and entertain in the most creative, innovative or just plain joyful ways. That, ultimately, is what we're going to be talking about today. The 2026 awards and the winner of the grand prize, the Most Amazing Award. But first, we need to set the scene, lay some groundwork, and take a trip into Thorsten and Matt's flamingo pink bubble. Let's talk more about that and where Amaze even came from, and the whats and the whys of running an international electronic playground. Thorsten, my first question is for you, and this is perhaps the most obvious but important one. What is Amaze?
Amaze is a lot. You know it for Amaze Berlin, probably. We run this festival since 15 years now. But Amaze started in 2008 and is a kind of a brand, a label for celebrating art, games and other media. So we grew a little bit into it, or myself I grew into it, to also define what Amaze is. And Amaze is a really kind of a field for experimentation, for art house games, playful media, to really kind of cross interdisciplinary work, artistic expression, less as a business event, we're talking about creation. Amaze is everything what you basically can imagine, what you don't see at other game events.
How did Amaze start? Like, what was the thinking behind it, and what were your intentions and ambitions when founding the festival?
Founding a festival was a longer process. Founding Amaze started basically because I was running around as a journalist at industry events, game industry events, and my good old friend Michael Liebe, he was my camera person. I was in front of the camera. I was asking stupid questions. I was meeting not really the artists. I had not so much fun because, industry events are kind of, for me, a little bit boring, especially because I was outside the industry. I had nothing to do with video games at this time. But then I also discovered all these kind of indie game developers, and also I got introduced to Baby Castle and Indicate and all this kind of stuff, what seemed to be very, very interesting to me. And I was running around as well at Ars Electronica, Transmediale Festival, all these kind of media art festivals. And I was always interested in what is going on, also on the cultural side of technology and what can we actually do. And then I discovered this kind of wonderful games world and was thinking like, oh my God, this is something what is completely new for me. Maybe I can combine it with music. I was very much in micro music and all this kind of 8-bit music, and I was like, more video games is also a nice fit, and there was people, cool community, let's start something, because there was nothing in Berlin, there was nothing in Germany, there was actually nothing in Europe what actually covered that. It was already happening in the US, but not in Europe. So we were saying, okay, let's go, let's start a maze.
What does a maze do that other games festivals don't? And on the other hand, is there anything you wish you could do with a maze, but you haven't yet?
Good question. I mean, a maze is basically a conference. It's workshops. It's an exhibition. It's as well a lot of night events. It's also a lot of interaction with maybe a different scene. It was always, a maze festival was also happening in locations which are not convention centers. It's kind of very, very edgy, bar style event locations. And this also, I mean, Berlin also is a very, very nice location to run something what also can run until 6 a.m. in the morning. And we had a lot of parties and stuff like that. And also, I think Berlin is a very, very open-minded city. Also, the people are interested in what is happening around, especially all these culture people. And I think everything what we did now with the festival was, as I said before, it's not business focused. It's not that we want to create a platform for pitchers. We have all the publishers there, but for me and also for the team, I think it's the most important thing to create a home where people can go back from the festival, from the event after 4 days and say, hey, I'm motivated, I'm inspired, I'm gonna go on, and I met a lot of cool people, a lot of friends, I'm not drained, you know, and this is something what I've heard a lot from other people at industry events, that they are drained, that they are also unmotivated, that they are actually like, question themselves, is this the right thing what I'm doing and stuff like that. And I think, and I have the feeling that Amaze is in that kind of way very, very different because we don't put pressure on people. We basically create a home where the international community can meet. And we started with 50 people, now we have 1,500 people from around the world, from 70 countries. Also, Matthias will tell you about the Amaze Award submissions. I mean, this is something what we built up, grassroots, because we were learning from the people, we were listening to the people, what they want, and I think this is something what is the core in our whole doing, because we are listening and we want to serve the community and we love our community.
I would also say that first and foremost, it's a festival, so it's about celebrating this art culture, and it's not just about games, it's actually all kinds of playful media, right? So we have artists coming from theaters, from performance arts, from music, and all of those people, they're doing something interactive, some kind of art, some kind of expression, and they may have different languages to talk about it, but it's super interesting to go to a festival like this. You think it's about games, and it is playful, but you experience something completely different than what you experience at most games conferences, I would say.
And also, I mean, we are challenging as well the people a little bit who are coming to the festival, because I think when they go to a game event, they only meet game developers usually. And as Matthias already said, so we are working with theaters together, we have performances happening, we have a lot of music acts which have nothing to do with video games, but there is always my dream to connect people from other art forms with the video games world, because I think both sides can learn a lot and also can create a fruitful base to basically, to move forward the media. So basically, the art form, video games should be a little bit more, open and let also other people in. And also, I think it's also happening right now that museums and theaters are working with game developers together, and they're also looking for skilled people. And I think this is something what is definitely something what we are doing very well at the moment with the festival.
What we want to do in the future, I think that is always also up for the community. That's why we provide this home, right? So whatever they bring in, we kind of try to listen to them and provide whatever is needed. So that's why the Amaze Festival also changes a lot. Like, I don't know, with the name, for instance, starting with Indie Connect, now we're Amaze, then there's a new subtitle, Playful Media in there, so we're always going with the flow and trying to support people on the fringes of their arts.
Exactly, and I think also something what Actually, it's not so new because, I mean, Amaze started already in 2008 and we did some kind of bar events. It was called the Amaze Jump and Run parties. We always showed one game and then we had music. And I already was writing on the flyer art house games, celebrating art house games. So, but somehow it came up again, whatever, in 2015 or 16, where I was actually talking about it as well in the opening speech. And then I was like, art house games, because I think art house games is definitely part of the indie games world, but art house games is a little bit more into the, let's say more like in the meaningful as well experimental side of video games, also short games. And I see it more like what I've also learned a lot from the movie industry, that art house film everybody knows, right? And when I talk about art house games, then suddenly all this kind of funders from the cultural scene that suddenly understand, okay, yeah, this is this, it's also political, it's social critical. And this is basically exactly what I want to see and what I want to hear, that people actually understand that video games are more, right? Something more than just like an entertainment form and just a product. So actually this is a piece of art. And this is also why Matthias and I also not talk about games basically. We are talking about works, and works is a little bit different in the language. We also call our speakers usually artists, not speakers. We are trying to build our own Amaze universe, what people actually really love.
You talked there a little about art games, and this is a subject that I've covered in great depth on a previous episode of the show. So just thought I'd throw this question in there now. What is an art game? How would you define an art game?
I mean, it's a good question. I mean, as I said, every game can be art, and it depends of where it actually comes from and how deep you really want to go into the narrative. I would say entertaining games also have nice narratives, but I think what art games or art house games are bringing up are more like personal ways and personal stories and personal perspectives on the worldview. Maybe they're a little bit more radical and experimental as well in the gameplay, because they are not serving a main audience. They are basically serving no one. We basically gonna try to find them, and also we're gonna display them at the festival. But for me, an art game is just something what describes the personal journey of the artist.
Yeah, I would also say in general it's about expression, and not gaining the most amount of money, getting money as the main goal.
So who would you say that the festival is for? Who should attend Amaze?
Everybody's welcome. This is number one. So it started as basically like a community B2B event. We also invite a lot of people from around the world. We are working with institutions together. So also Amaze had a festival in Johannesburg between 2012 and 2017. And we are open to everyone. So to all kind of cultural inputs from everywhere. So this is very important. This is the B2B part, and people are talking about their journey basically, and how they also see video games and how basically the community is in their other countries. I think this is one thing. The other thing, and because we created this kind of pink bubble, with flamingos and everything is pink, and we also go to Gamescom, for example. For me, it's very important right now, because we do this now since a while, that basically we are not anymore so much in our bubble alone. For me, it's really kind of Amaze is something what also people who are just gamers can also experience that. And the festival is also for gamers. So we have our open days, for the general public, public play, so where they also can go and join some workshops, they see some performances, we have a market, we have all the exhibits there, all the nominees, all the honorable mentions, and all the wonderful installations what we bring. And I think this is something what a lot of people don't know, and I want to work on that a little bit more, to be more inviting to the general public, that they actually understand how cool the other world is of video games, and this is going to be the next step.
I would add to that 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 the approach that we are open for all is actually important, not just so that people get to know what games can be, but because the selection we're having, it's like a collection of expression of people all over the world. Like it's learning different perspectives. It's kind of our goal to provide that to a lot of people. And I'm not sure how that is like outside of Germany, but in Germany, most people thinking about games is all just like playful things, I guess. So to show those people, hey, if you're interested in games, there are all kinds of perspectives. It's important to learn those perspectives, and ultimately it provides like a reason to discuss different perspectives on the world, gets humans closer together, and that's what we're trying in not just the festival but with all other aspects. That's why we are going to like Gamescom, where we have like the normal audience as well, and it's also why we have a public play day where we specifically invite everybody to come to the festival for a very cheap price and not the conference part of it, so that they can experience that.
Yeah, it's definitely the most challenge to bring the general public, because we know what we do. We love what we do. We have our wonderful audience. We have a wonderful community. But when you, for example, look on Steam or whatever, or on GOG, these games are not visible. And I think for a festival like Amaze, we not have the power now, but I think we can definitely change and have an impact on the industry as well with what we do. Because a lot of people talking, and a lot of people also from the AAA industry or III industry are coming to Amaze just to get the feeling back while they're doing video games. So for them it's holiday, and I hope so that maybe in 2 or 3 years that we have an art house games label, where all the games are listed and people actually can find them and also experience them and also share them with their friends, instead of just playing what the best marketing is going to give you.
A welcoming, inclusive community and festival celebrating and showcasing creative, independent digital art that exists separate from the trends of mainstream popular culture. I mean, that's why we're all here, right? Thorsten and Matt have there, I think, encapsulated what Amaze is, its intentions, its views, and its spirit. We now know what they celebrate and why. And so that's why now we're going to meet the true subject of our talk today. A guest that I consider myself incredibly lucky to have on the show. Today's guest is, as you'll hear, an endlessly curious and creative individual whose attitude towards art and the act of creation is as aspirational and inspiring as you could ever wish for. Today's guest is, as you'll hear, someone who simply seems like they were put on this earth to make stuff, and to do it with a sense of joy and fun, constantly enthralled by the thrill of realising visions from the whimsical to the grandiose, from the smutty to the serene. Today's guest is the 2026 winner of that grand prize of Amaze Berlin. Let's meet them now. Oh, yeah, sorry, the intro. Yeah, let's do the intro. Hi, I'm Andrew. Welcome to No, it doesn't feel right. Oh, hey, what's this?
I'm not Andrew, and welcome to Dialogue Tree. This is episode 43, introduced in song. Amazed, not confused, Ben Swithen on awards, gender gladness and trans theft. Also, this is Dialogue Tree.
Yeah, that's way better.
Trans theft Horso. Hi, I'm Ben Swithen. I'm a person. I make games and videos and music and clothes and various other things, but I feel like my personhood is my main thing.
Benjamin Swithen is a musician, writer, visual artist, clothes maker, jingle maker, boundary breaker, and a developer of computer games. They released their first game, By Hyacinths, in 2022. And they released their second game in 2025. And that is the game that won the most amazing award at Amaze Berlin. That game is Trans Theft Horso. I watched the ceremony, I played this game, I loved it. So I reached out to Benjamin to see if they would like to talk more about it, as well as the life, career and inspirations that have brought them to this point. And I was delighted when they said yes. That is more than enough context from me. Let's talk to Ben. Ben Swithen, welcome to Dialogue Tree. Thanks for coming on the show today. How are you?
I'm doing okay, but I have a slight cough, which hopefully will not be too noticeable in my voice.
That's what editing is for.
Hooray!
Well, I hope you're feeling okay anyway. So we are meeting today in the aftermath of the Amaze Berlin event, which you attended, you gave a talk at, and you won quite a special award at the ceremony. Now, we'll get to all of that shortly. But first, how have the last few days been for you?
They've been very confusing. I really didn't go there with a mind to winning, and so when it happened, I was gobsmacked, and I kind of don't know. It's not the sort of thing that happens to me. And so it's been hard to persist in my usual way of just, having imposter syndrome since then, and I'm trying to work out what my new syndrome should be.
I believe you said in your speech you went there intending to fail in style.
Yes, absolutely. Which I think I would have done quite well.
You did exude style at the ceremony. I will say that, and it was a very charming speech. I was smiling from ear to ear for the whole thing.
So was I.
First, for the listener, how would you describe what you do? And are there any particular projects you have worked on that you would point people to as entry points for your work?
I do lots of things. I have tended to think of myself as a writer mainly, but I don't really write or I write things as part of something else. So there have been times when I would introduce myself first as a musician or as a video maker. At the moment as a game maker, because I've made 2 games. And wowzers, that's a lot of games for someone who previously had not made games. I was once introduced by a friend of mine as a puppeteer, and I thought, really? I think a polymath might be the thing, because I do a bit of everything. I always say that I don't have a lot of talent, but I have a lot of talents.
That's an excellent way of putting it. You may be the first polymath on the show. You're the second puppeteer on the show, which is very, very weird. Maybe I should rebrand.
It's a very visual medium.
Well, yeah, they say that podcasts should be pivoting towards video, so maybe this is my in. You have touched on there about how you work across multiple mediums. So I guess the devil's advocate question is, why? Why not focus on just one area?
I don't have any answer to that at all. Focusing on one area will be really sensible, because then I could get really good at one thing and, put all my energy into it. I think my attention is divided among many things, and I don't really understand how people can do one thing. Or specifically, I think if you like films, why would you not make films? And if you like music, why would you not make music? And if you like clothes, why would you not make clothes? And it is baffling to me that not everybody does all of these things, which might mean I just have time on my hands. But basically, I want to do it all. It's a tragedy that life is too short to be everyone and do everything.
God, I love that answer. And to sort of piggyback off that, and to come back to you talking about making computer games now, why computer games? What, to you, makes computer games an effective medium for storytelling?
I like that you have a lot of choice in computer games, even if it's not something where your choices matter a lot. You can run around and jump around and have fun with it. I did a talk a few days ago at Amaze about how I think that puppet shows and video games are fundamentally the same thing. Both as a maker, because you're putting together various assets that you know are going to be used, and then you sort of set them off and have them go. But I think of a video game as it's playing with toys. That's the midpoint of them. There is a story there, but you are the audience and you are the puppeteer, and you have these toys that you can play with in the way that you choose to. I mean, some computer games are very prescriptive. They say you need to do this, the only real option here is go through this door, etc. But I feel like it is the closest thing to, here's a story, but you have sufficient control that you feel like this is an adventure you're having with toys, and that's what makes it playing.
Your first game was By Hyacinths. What was like the inciting incident for that? What made you think this needs to be told as a video game?
A friend of mine who was formerly a housemate asked me to make a piece of art for his art zine, and he commissioned me and he gave me a small but by my standards quite large fund to just make a piece of art. I think he was expecting me to make a film so that I could then write about it and give images for his art zine. But he gave me 64 days to make it, and I thought 64 is one of the computer numbers, because it's a power of 2. And I'd sort of been wanting to make a game for ages and ages, but I thought if I start trying to get into games, I will invest myself in a project, I'll do lots of the preamble, and then I'll take fright at the systems, and I will never complete it. But if I take £200 and have a deadline, and say, yes, I will do this, then I feel an obligation to force myself to work every day on that, to work out how do you make this, how do you use the program, how do you make pixel art at all. So I seized the chance. As to why that was the game that I made, I had a real recurring dream again and again of going back to my university housing. I kept dreaming about going back there. I don't think nostalgia is the right word, but I think there was something just wonderful about university and the fact that it was in some ways a glorious 3-year holiday, because I studied creative writing and I lived in the Yorkshire Sculpture Park. But it was just a time when you live with your friends and you're surrounded by friends and you can have friend time at any time. And I kept dreaming that and going back to it. And the housing block that I lived in back then doesn't exist anymore. It's been destroyed. They closed that place down and it was not a very attractive housing block. But in my dreams it was real. And I thought if I put these dreams into a computer game and do something about remembering and going back there, then maybe I'll get it out of my dreams and into a thing that I can visit. And it did stop the dreams. And the housing unit that I lived in was called Swithen. And I took that as my pen name, Ben Swithen. It's my legal name now as well. And since the house of that name has been destroyed, I feel like I am the one true heir of Swithen.
So you said, like, if you like films, why don't you make films? If you like clothes, why don't you make clothes? If you like games, why don't you make games? What sort of games do you play?
I was about to say all sorts of games. That's not true. I'm very fussy with games. I like the games that I like. And often people say, oh, here's another game that's like that. And I'll say, no, it's not like that. I don't like games like this. I like these specific games, which means I latch onto things and become obsessed. So some fairly mainstream series, the Civilization and Sims games. I had a great passion for platform games as a child. Jill of the Jungle was a classic that no one ever talks about, and that's fine. It's possibly not great, but I liked it. Stardew Valley, of course. Mm-hmm. Grand Theft Auto, not usually my sort of thing. It's a bit off-brand, but it's my brother's favourite game, or it was until he discovered My Summer Car, which is a Finnish game. But I thought, you know what, I should play this game so I can have something I can talk to him about, because we're not quite estranged, but I feel like it's good for me to look for some common topics. And I was absolutely absorbed by the open world and the fact that you can do missions, or you can just go driving around and drive up a mountain, or you can go and play tennis or something. So I like lots of games.
Going back to the mediums that you work in, do you find any one of those easier to complete a project in? Do you find any one of them easier to get started? Which one is do you consider any of those to be sort of a home medium for you?
I find it very easy to start making a piece of music. Finishing a piece of music to my satisfaction gets harder because I think I have become more aware of what I can do, and that means that I judge myself more harshly. And I also look at the music, I listen to the music I've made, and I think, oh, anyone could make this. I could have made this. And then I think, well, I did make this. And of course it sounds like a thing that I would make because this is a style I have. So I think that is one that I find very easy to get back into. I have tunes and I like to sing around the house. So it's a wonderful thing. I really like sewing as a thing, making costumes. And I constantly want to do that and then I don't do it, which means I acquire a lot of material. And I think of writing stories as my main thing, but I don't really do that very much. Although making a game is very much writing stories. In fact, the real reason that I wanted to make a game, other than the ones I've already mentioned, is that I love writing dialogue. I think I can really enjoy writing dialogue, and I don't love working with actors. I have very high regard for actors. When I lived at that arts campus, I was surrounded by actors. But if they're not right outside your front door, I feel like it's a lot of hassle to get actors in and get them to do things. And then I feel like I owe them a lot.
Talking about music there, and we will talk a little bit about music for your from your game a bit later on. And I swear this is the last time I will ask you about sort of influences and inspirations, but I've been really enjoying listening to your music sort of over the last few days, like in preparation for this. Do you have any particular influences on your musical style? Like, you seem to have quite a broad knowledge of instruments and instrumentation and musical styles. Is there any are there any particular artists or musicians that have informed that?
I like a lot of music. And growing up, my main influence was probably Gilbert and Sullivan, which is a slightly weird one to have now. I didn't really... Like my dad before me, I only really listened to classical music for most of my teen years. I didn't know that he did. I only learned very recently he was like that, and apparently is still like that. But I didn't really discover music outside that until I was at university, when I was introduced to the Divine Comedy, and They Might Be Giants, and many other wonderful things, and suddenly I had a lot more influences coming in. But I think I had a lot of a grounding in Gilbert and Sullivan and hymns, among other things. And now I try to be fairly broad with the music that I listen to and the music styles I attempt, because my side hustle is making podcast theme tunes and jingles, which I do through Fiverr. And people will come to me and say, we need someone to make a piece of music in this genre. Can you do that? And I'll say, yes! And then I'll go and find out what that genre is and learn how to make it. And I think that has led me to have a lot of instrument samples. Not all the instruments you hear on my things are real by any means. So I can play them with the keyboard. There are some real accordions and recorders and a harmonica or two in this house, among other things. But lots of music. I always say that my favourite genre of music taken as an overall is foreground music. Background music doesn't do very much for me. But something that can have your attention, I like a lot.
I think that's such an admirable attitude to have.
Thank you.
To just throw yourself into something. Say, I'm going to challenge myself to make this thing, and let's just go for it.
Well, the commissions don't come very frequently, and so whenever there's an opportunity, I take it, and I present myself as very confident in doing it. And so far, all the reviews I've had back from people have been 5 stars, so if they really don't like what I'm doing, they just aren't leaving reviews. Or most of them like it. But yes, I really like the challenge of they come in with a whole new tone and genre, and I think, okay, let's see how that works.
So just to take a screeching, like, handbrake turn, hard pivot away from your artistic influences, I think we should talk a little bit about quite a weighty topic, but you have quite a positive and refreshing sort of take on it. And this will lead us into talking about your game in the second part.
Neat.
I really enjoyed your video that's on your YouTube, and it's from a few years ago now. It's called Adjectival Non-Binary.
Yes.
In which you elaborated on your thoughts on how to describe and define your gender identity. In that video, you talked about how gender language at the time felt too limited or inadequate in describing how you feel about yourself, and how there is an inherent negativity to it. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit now, about what that video was about.
I haven't seen that video in a good long while, but as I recall, the video is very much about how what I was doing there, I sort of have expanded since then into... There is a very good local queer stand-up comedy evening in Sheffield called Quacks. And basically what I was doing in that video, I now do there as stand-up in 5-minute lumps. And I think a lot of what was in that then appeared in stand-up I have done there. Yes, I think it is odd that non-binarism or being non-binary, it never feels like there is a word for what it is so much as there is a word for what it isn't. I had a therapist who said that me describing myself as non-binary and asexual felt very negative. I thought, this therapist is not getting it. And I don't think this is going to work out well. I think it is hard to I found it very hard to articulate to people when I came out as trans/non-binary that I was non-binary. Because if you go to someone and say, oh, I'm a woman, by the way, I'm a woman now, they can conceptualize that. They can grasp it. They might disagree, but they know what the rumpus is. But if you say, the whole gender thing we've been taught since probably the first thing we learned at school other than colours, well, I'm something that transcends that and slips the surly bonds of gender. That's difficult to express to people, and I think it is harder for people to go, oh, you're non-binary, I know exactly what that is, so much as, oh, is that like vegetarian?
Great, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. I think that's a good point for us to take a short break, and when we come back, we will talk all about Amaze Berlin, the most amazing award, and your game, Trans Theft Horso.
Hooray!
Sorry, listener, that was a bit of a tease. We will get to Trans Theft Horso soon, but first, we're going to head back to Germany to hear from Thorsten and Matt. They're going to tell us about the Amaze Awards, what they are, why they are different, and why they matter. Let's talk to them, and after that, it's back to Ben. Matt, you are the awards coordinator and curator for Amaze. Could you tell the listener a little about what that role involves?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of the main selection of what we have at the Amaze Festival. When you go there, all is centered around the nominees and a lot of additional work. But in general, so my job starts like half a year before the festival starts by collecting the feedback from last year, trying to figure out what we need to change for the submissions, and then I have to get these submissions out, the call for submissions, and like finding the right sources, the right people to talk to, because we're not just in games, right? So we have to find where are those people? Are they students? Is this like an art collective somewhere where nobody looked before? And talk with them why Amaze maybe is cool for them. And then it's also gathering an international selection committee. Last year it was about 50 people who then help to play all the submissions we get in. And that's a lot. And I have to give everybody the right amount of games and the right amount of works they can actually play and review. And I also gather in a team the jury, which will then select the main winner. But before that, we get all the feedbacks. We sit together as a Amaze team. We check what works came out really outstanding, and then we also check for from which countries are they, what teams are behind those works, how important are they in a sense of I don't know, did they get a lot of awards already? Are they completely new voices in this sector? And then we puzzle that together. And then we basically have the nominees, and that's when the judges get in, and we have 5 of them. One of them is always the winner from the last year, and we try to have multiple perspectives, so they're not just from games, they're from all kinds of disciplines, right? They then have to play all of those nominees, and they also select the categories they're competing in. So this is always fun. So as a submitter, you can't decide you want to go for one category. You're actually applying for all. And the judges will then, select the works which are winning. And when that's happening, I'm breathing for a week maybe, or 3 days or so, because then afterwards I'm going into the award show mode, and I'm preparing the award show, getting together the moderator, the performer, how the show looks like, what it does, and then doing the show and handing off everything else to the team, for exhibition. And some of the artists are maybe on a stage for a talk or a workshop or a performance piece. And when the award show is over, then my work is done, and I have usually 1 day of the festival left to enjoy.
Away from the main prize, which we will come to, The awards at Amaze are very distinct from other ceremonies. The titles are very unique, and like the festival, they have a very clear identity to them. Like, for example, there's the Human Machine Award, the Explorer Award, and the Wings Award. I kind of want to talk about all of these, but in the interest of time, are you able to guide the listener through a couple of these? Like, for example, what is the Human Machine Award? What does it recognise, and how does the submission and selection process work?
Right. Yeah, so the categories are very much on like what people would experience instead of like different skills in them. And the Human Machine Award is like my most favorite because it's the one where a work connects people. Either like in the same spot or by talking about it or online, just fosters some human connection. That's the one. What is this about? But my other two favorites are actually Long Feature and Digital Moment because I love that at first glance it's about like a long or short game or something, but it's much closer to if you compare a work to how books are usually categorized. So one is more like a poem, and the other one is more like a novel. And you can read them all over again. And a Digital Moment thing could also be a work which is changing all of the time, but it's somehow short and gives you like a poetic feeling. Whereas a novel guides you to a longer experience. And this can also be short, but maybe it stays with you for a long time.
But I mean, I also like to add to that. I mean, the award is also existing since 2012, and it's a huge development. What is happening, and also was happening. I mean, the first game was basically one game only was winning the prize. The most amazing indie game, I think it was called. Got a wonderful trophy and 5,000 euros. And then we basically also Matthias and I were always discussing how we can shape and change and shift the award. There's also how basically all the kind of new categories were coming out. So for example, Human Machine Award is also kind of very much connected to the scene around 2014, 13, 14, where there was a lot of local multiplayer game everywhere, Suddenly everybody wanted to play that, especially in the community. And then we were kind of, okay, let's dedicate an award for that. I mean, we also had weird awards like the Other Dimension Awards and something like that, because, I mean, there was the virtual reality stuff, and then we had the What the Fuck Award, and then maybe Matthias can talk about that. It was also existing for 3 years, but suddenly the jury basically was saying, what is this? What the fuck is this, What do you want to say with that? I mean...
Yeah, it was not really clear enough with that one. But that's what I said earlier. Like, we listen to feedback all the time and change around it. And yeah, Other Dimensions, I think at the time it was important to have like a specific award for VR works. But after a while, like, this is a technical thing, basically. So VR could be in all kinds of categories. So we ditched that, and then we tried to find another award which is more online with and we're trying to get like different disciplines together, which was first the Collider and now the Explorer Award, where we specifically award a work which works together with sciences or with some people outside of usual games, or how usual game development works.
Yeah, it's an interesting journey, that's for sure, and I think it's not over yet. I mean, it's also like we basically this year we had as well the XR History Award, the first time at the Maze Festival, because sometimes we connect other awards to our Maze Award. Wings Award is something what we do already since 5 years now. We work together very closely with Wings. Because I think it's very, very important to support and empower female developers or anyhow the LGBTQ community plus community. And yeah, I mean, this is something what is not finished yet, I guess. So because the community is shifting and changing, and but I also have the experience that really the audience and also the people who see the awards, they really love it, because all the the work and everything what also Matthias puts into the whole how it looks like and how it works, is super interesting, new and also something what you don't see in any other game event. So beautiful, colorful, and also experimental. We have good music, a lot of good music. The moderators are incredible. Yeah, and we always try something new out. I just remember during COVID, because we have not stopped during COVID, right? So, and then we also had the award there. We were playing with the green screen and everything. It was so much fun, and people really appreciated. They really appreciated it because we were not stopping. And also, this is what is important. We love our community, and we need to not stop. Yeah.
So, why not give out more general awards? Why not award best writing, best animation, or other more easily recognizable categories?
Yeah, that's mainly because we're not doing just games. Like a theater piece for best animation would be kind of a weird thing to do. We try to go for the experience people have and not like technical skills. Short, easy.
We should talk about the grand prize of the festival, and that is the Most Amazing Award. Now, what does this award recognise? And who are some of the previous winners, and how did they meet the criteria?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the Most Amazing Award is the one we have the longest. It was there from the beginning, and we always frame it as like a work which is somehow forward-thinking and very playful, and is like a work of art in general terms. Could be anything. And also, when the judges get together, we always tell them, "Hey, you decide like where the festival is going," because the Most Amazing is the one which is usually most reported on. So the first year when Proteus by Ed Key and David Kanaga was nominated, it was like a pixelated work which most people at the time didn't even recognize as a game, because it's like one of the first walking simulators, and it had music simulation in the background. It was very outstanding. So and afterwards people thought, oh, okay, cool, that is what Amaze is about, and this is also like leading ahead, and the people submitting the next year, they will like look at last year's winner and decide if the festival is for them. So that's why this is super important. And like some outstanding works, I think next to Proteus, I think Attentat 1942 was a very outstanding work by Charles University. That one we couldn't exhibit actually because it has swastikas in that, which was forbidden at the time in Germany, and started a big discussion how educational interactive works could work in a sense. So that fueled the discussion we had the years after, and ultimately that was overcome, and now it's possible to have that in artistic works. And another one maybe Cosmic Top Secret by a lot of people like Trine Lea and Lise Saxtrup from Denmark. It was their first work in general, and it was super outstanding because it just broke all the genre conventions of normal games, and it was a personal story about the connection to parents, but at the same time it was a political piece about secrecy and political conspiracies. Yeah, so the games have a deeper meaning usually, and they are outstanding in a sense, and they award just doing something amazing what nobody has done before, and that's what we want to show at the festival.
And how would you say this year's winner met the criteria?
Yeah, it was fantastic to see. I think like the discussion was like the first question I asked the jury is like, what is your favorite game from all the ones you just played? And that one was coming up a lot, like for most. So it was kind of like, oh, this stuck with me the most. But we still discussed a lot because at first glance it didn't seem like a most amazing winner. But the further we discussed, it's like, this is like a thing which is actually needed in this time. So for those who don't know, like Trans Theft Horso was the winner this year, and it is basically a game, a Western game, but where queerness is a normal thing in this world, and even the bad characters, they have. They use the right words and everything, and it's like the sentence stuck in here is like gender gladness, and it's just such a positive vibe in there, but still a lot of problems you can have in the game, and we and the judges didn't see that in the past done anywhere. That you can have a positive world and that you can have queer topics in the game without making them a problem or the root of like the gameplay and everything. And that was fantastically outstanding. And if you haven't listened to the interview with Ben, you should definitely do that, I guess, because it's just a fantastic person and exactly what we needed this time.
First, I think I do need to ask, could you give the listener an elevator pitch for Trans Theft Horso?
So, you are obliged to go west, you don't want to, you know that it is the most horrific place on Earth, and then when you get to it, it is just incredibly colourful and full of petable animals, but also there is oppression and alarm and trouble, and all you want to do is go back over the border, but you can't, and so it is one disaster after another. But also, the fundamental thing of the game is not like most westerns, which are about men who sweat and sweaty men. Those are the two things in westerns. It is about gender gladness. It is about whatever else you're doing, there is time for gender gladness, and to you're there seeking hormones, not for yourself originally. You start out seeking hormones for your brother, who also needs other medication and can't go on this journey himself. And on that journey, you have the option of taking hormones or not. You have the option of knowing more about yourself. You know confidently from the start that you are non-binary. But there are many ways that one can validly be non-binary. And you sort of get to discover this while also petting animals and fighting admirals and evading creatures and riding some of them.
You brought up one of the core themes of the game there, that being of gender gladness. And this seems like a good point to talk about that, this idea of trans joy and gender gladness. Aside from being a very fun and funny game to play, those two things are essentially the core of it. You're welcome. Could you speak a little bit about this? Like, what is gender gladness, and why is this important to demonstrate and to showcase in entertainment or media?
Gender gladness is the opposite of gender dysphoria, and I think that everybody, regardless of whether they are cis or trans, encounters gender gladness, and it is a wonderful thing. It is a kind of delight. Gender gladness is not a term that I've seen used outside of this, but I like it as a summary, and also because a GG is a horse, so there's a neat balance there. In the game, you can get gender gladness by having your gender acknowledged, taking hormones if you choose to, choosing your pronouns, which everyone in the game will use correctly, no one is misgendering you there, or by petting animals, or by playing a piano. And fun fact, in the real world, you can get gender gladness from exactly the same things.
I also noticed how the protagonist is not like tortured by their otherness. They are who they are. They know who they are. Their gender otherness is not a cause of conflict or trauma for them. It is part of their character, and that's quite refreshing. Is that something intentional? Do you say that's part of gender gladness?
That is why the game came to exist. When I made my first game, By Hyacinths, which despite its title is a free game, it was I submitted it to the Queer Games Awards in Melbourne, and I don't know if those still happen. They don't update their website. I hope they still happen. And I completely forgot I'd submitted it. I don't know if they even sent me a message acknowledging that I'd submitted it. And then a few months later, they told me I'd won an award, the bronze medal there. And I wasn't expecting that. I didn't know I was nominated for anything. And I played through the other medalists at the Queer Games Festival in Melbourne, and they were really good games. Like really intense and fascinating and very they were games that were very much like themselves. And I love any game or anything, any movie, any piece of music, whatever, that is more like itself than it is like other things. But a running theme in them was queerness as a source of, not as a source of woe, not as a source of suffering, but it seemed like one of the conditions of being trans or being gay throughout those games was it sets you at conflict with other people. It gives you extremely awkward situations. It is full of coming out and trauma and upset and abuse. And I think there's definitely a place for games like that. I think that's a very valid response to the world that we live in. But I really wanted there to be a queer game which wasn't that you couldn't look at and say, this person is suffering, and that is a consequence, however indirect, of their identity. I wanted a game where your non-binarism, your being trans, mattered and was relevant, but was not the primary motivator for why are you suffering. I know the primary motive for why are you suffering in all of these is actually other people and societal attitudes, so I don't want to suggest that it is because of who you are. But I wanted to have a game where you could relish being who you are and not feel like that was also why you're having a bad time.
We should talk a little bit about what the game actually is, like what you're doing in it and what it looks and sounds like. Trans Theft Horso, it presents as sort of similar to a 16-bit era top-down RPG, but it quite clearly subverts several tropes of the genre, like primarily in the dialogue, the theming, and the combat. Did you have any specific influences when it came to the game design of this?
In terms of what would I like this to look like immediately, when I made By Hyacinths, which, as I say, I had to make the whole thing in 64 days, and it is a smaller game than Trans Theft Horso, but there are still about 5 hours of gameplay in it and a lot of characters. What I had been playing a lot of at that point was Stardew Valley. So while it is a very different game from that, I liked the idea of pixel-based buildings, pixel-based people. I did that in 16 by 16 pixel blocks. I did Trans Theft Horso in 24 by 24, which is a small numerical step up from 16 to 24, but once it is squared, you've actually got twice as many pixels, so it is twice as much detail you can get in there. And I don't know, it was a notion of how can I use the pixel making things to sort of present a world, and I've always enjoyed looking at sort of the tile maps of pixel games. I mentioned Jill of the Jungle, which was an epic Mega Games game back in the day, and I've looked up the maps of all the possible tiles for those, and I find there's something very interesting about you create every square you're going to make this game out of, and then you use those squares in whatever creative ways you would like to. And any game which gives you a level editor, I have always liked. You can just go, oh, they've given us a limited number of things, but you can do so many things with that. Minecraft, actually, is probably an example as well. You can make creative use of a limited number of square things. Yes, it is an RPG technically, except in perhaps the main way an RPG is defined, according to a friend of mine, is that you have stats and you build them up, and they are occasionally tested against each other. But you never have any stats of any kind in this game, except gender gladness, and there is no record of how much you have. You just have it and it increases.
What drew you to setting the game in the Old West? Why not a modern setting, or like a fantasy one, more typical of an RPG?
I'm not convinced it is the Old West. It is the West, but I don't think it is the Wild West, and I'm pretty sure it's not the American West. I find Westerns quite amusing. It's not a genre I like a lot, but I like a lot of examples that are technically within it. And it feels like one of the most genre-y genres, like fantasy is, in that you can put a horse and a gun and a hat in it, and those icons just conjure up a whole world, and then you can subvert it as much as you want. But I also feel like Westerns are the most gender-conservative genres in some ways, in as much as they are about men. They are about men, I mean, the real classic traditional ones. They're about men going out and fighting men, and sweating while they do it. and the Dollars trilogy, Sergio Leone's Dollars trilogy, I think there are at most 2 women in that, and they have very small roles. And I thought I like the idea of doing a West that is really non-binary, and that I love the idea that someone would play this going, oh, it's a Western, and would come away saying, I don't think the person who made this has ever seen a Western. This is a Western. Trans Theft Horso is a Western which has 1 gun and 1 bullet, and they appear at different ends of the game, and they never interact. Despite its title, it only has a horse in it for about 30 seconds, which is why it didn't get into the recent Steam Horse Games sale, and that's a valid decision on their part. Westerns are just really weird, and I also think I'm not American, and Westerns are very American things, and America is very terrible at the moment, but I like the idea of just claiming the genre as something far more abstract. My favourite Western overall is Frontier Psychiatrist, that astonishingly edited song and music video from the early noughties. It is not a Western per se, but it is an editing together of things to sort of give you a vibe of being inside a swirling world of Western. And it made me imagine a concept Western, like you can have a concept album. But it's not an album that's about the West, it's a West that's about concepts.
That's a nice little transition to talking about the visual and audio style of the game. And I think it's been nice just to give listeners an idea of how the game looks and sounds. So I'm going to expose my ignorance of animation game design here. So I will just posit this and you can correct me. I think visually the game, it looks sort of completely hand-drawn. Now, you talked about, I don't think that is the case, because you talked about like the pixel sort of art you've been doing. But I love how all the character portraits all feel like deliberately imperfect and a little bit wonky. Can you elaborate a little on the process of building the game's visual style?
Yes, they are not hand-drawn in as much as using a pen or anything on a graphics tablet. They are hand-drawn in as much as I went in with a mouse, or actually a lot of it was done with a trackpad, which I don't recommend, in a program called Sprite, although you can use GIMP or pretty much anything else. There are free options as well, and pretty much any program you use for pixel art is as good as any other on the scale I'm doing. Yes, I do them pixel by pixel. A lot of it is just minor adjustments there, and often I'll just draw a splodge in that the face pictures which pop up in dialogue are 72 by 72 pixels, which gives me a bit of freedom to work there. And I got a plugin which let me animate those, which just means I need to draw the same thing, copy the same thing several times and make small adjustments so things wiggle up and down across 4 or 8 frames of that. So I'll just draw a splodge, and then I'll put some eyes on it, and I'll start to think, does this look like it's coming together into a face? What sort of character is this? A surprising number of characters in the game I drew before I conceived of, because I like coming up with characters, but I'm not good at having an idea and then drawing it, because what I draw is very unpredictable. It's like my sewing. I don't sew things you could wear on the street. It's sort of chaotic, and you never know what you're going to get. And that is how it is with pixel art for me. Some people can get exactly what they want, and if you look at most people's RPGs and pixel art games, they are meticulous. They have set themselves rules that they follow with discipline. I set myself rules. I had a clear colour palette that I was working with. Establishing your colour palette at the start is an important thing to sort of tie it all together. And I thought, I want it to be like this, and I don't want it to be like that. But a lot of it is just flying blind and making pixel art, and occasionally I go, oh, that looks quite nice. But another thing I discovered from my sewing is that I don't know how to make things that are beautiful. But if you can work out how to make things that are ugly, it's much easier, and you can really lean into that and make them ugly in a way that nothing has been before. And that's going to end up astonishing, and that is going to come across as deliberate. So if you can't get deliberate beauty, lean into deliberate, outlandish ugliness. I wouldn't say all my characters are ugly, but I think I have deliberately made almost none of my characters attractive. I didn't want this to be about very conventional, attractive heroes. The other big impact on the visual style is that I was making this in RPG Maker. And I find it absurd that an RPG Maker game has managed to get to a festival, be nominated, and then win an award. I'm sure we'll come back to that. RPG Maker is a really good program, especially if you want to make RPGs. I kind of don't, but it was the program that was closest to what I could imagine making. I don't like RPG-style combat. I don't find it very interesting, and I don't have a particular nostalgia for it. But that meant that having 24 by 24 pixel basis, well, 48 by 48, but I made my images and then doubled their size so they would fit it. That had a lot of impact on what I could do and what I would do. And then I just sort of filled it in from there.
The music in the game, and there's a lot of music in the game.
There is. I think there's 50 tracks on the soundtrack. Yes,
it's amazing. And it's pretty consistent with your personal style that we hear across a lot of your other work. The kind of like dumb way that like came to me of describing a lot of your music is kind of like medieval sort of vaudeville performance art, in that you use instruments sort of traditionally associated with folk music in like quite playful and jaunty ways to tell humorous stories about your subjects. The soundtrack to Trans Theft Auto is probably also your most diverse work. There's some horns on some traditionally Western songs. There's a bit of opera on Capybara Aria. And there was a nice ambient electronica piece called Quantum of Sausage, which I enjoyed a lot. To me, it's so diverse that I just imagine it taking a lot of development time. And is that accurate at all? Did you approach the soundtrack to Trans Theft Auto any differently to your other work?
I did a bit. With lots of music, I am keyboard based and I will play it from a keyboard. But with Trans Theft Horso, the majority of the tracks, I sat down and programmed it note by note directly into Logic. Because I wanted to try... I feel like when I'm playing from a keyboard, it comes out a bit sloppy. Because my timing is inelegant. I know there are ways around that, but I thought, this is a computer game. I like the idea of leaning into computer game music by actually using the timing and the regularity, and do it in a way that is like computer game music, but subverting it in my own ways. I love that computer game music is... I think of it as quite annoying, and I love that. I think of it as looping, and I love the idea of having something that loops in a slightly unpredictable way. So the point that it comes around at the start of the loop again, you think, oh, really? And I like that you can sort of have a repeating pattern of music. There's not that long, but you can try and get quite a bit of diversity out of it by having it come back in different sounds or different vibes. There's one track called Skeletary, and I thought there's a place in Trans Theft Horso called Skeletown, and I wanted to make the classic piece of skeleton music, which is music you can have played on a xylophone. So I worked up a repeating piece that could be played on a xylophone sound, and I thought, well, now I've done that. Everyone does skeleton music on xylophone, so I'm going to take what was obviously composed for xylophone and have it played on just 7 different instruments, I think, 7 different rounds of it. So it starts out on a glockenspiel, which is as close as we get to that, and we variously get versions of it on fairground organ, synths. There's one of the verses of it where it is the skeleton theme played simultaneously on a very high-pitched flute and a low-pitched tuned timpani, and then in the 7th iteration it's played on farts. Because I thought, I don't know if people will be paying attention by that point, but I thought, you know what? Why not? Who's going to stop me here? So I think putting it in note by note. The other things that were very different in terms of me doing this compared to music that I've done before is that rather than working out the chords and going with what works as a chord sequence, which is my usual way of doing things, I thought I'm going to write a tune, and then I'm kind of going to write another tune that is simultaneous with that, and sort of build chords out of the notes. Just build by throwing up a third or whatever from there, and then another one, which means a lot of this has a different chord for every note, in a fast and chaotic way, and in a way that technically it works as music, but it's not like something I would have made before. And the other thing is that I wanted more control over my drums. in previous works, I've sometimes used the default GarageBand or Logic drums. I've got an actual MIDI drum kit that I got on Facebook Marketplace from somebody. I don't play it very well, but I like that I can, because it's really nice to hit drums. They go bing bang bosh. Very nice to... If you ever have the chance to play some drums, play them along with some jazz music that's slightly unpredictable in its timings, and you'll have more fun than you expect. But I wanted to program in the drums because I don't really understand what drumming is meant to be, but I like that you can just go, let's make a pattern out of these noises. They go... I found I think it's a decent sampler thing called paper drums. And it's a very distinctive set of drums. It was recorded by somebody in their bedroom, just each of the individual drum sounds. And there's just something crunchy about it, and kind of ridiculous and distinctive. So I put a lot of those in, and I put a lot of funky bass in, whether it is suitable for the genre or not. Because there are a lot of tracks in this soundtrack where I couldn't easily tell you the genre, but I could tell you, oh, I can dance to that almost.
Do you have any formal training in music or an educational background in it?
I never studied it at GCSE or higher. I wish I had, but I had learned music, but I never got as far as passing a grade 1 music exam on the piano. So I stopped doing it formally. I've always enjoyed it, but I was in various musicals at school, and I was in some choirs. I was in the County Youth Choir in Durham, and I think that gave me a lot of my sort of understanding of the way that music can work with the different parts going together. And then I kind of stopped doing music for a while until I was at university, when I borrowed one of my dad's accordions. He has several, it's fine, for a photo shoot. I thought, you know what, while I have it, I'll see what I can do with this. And the accordion, I do not exaggerate here, it is the best instrument for learning how to make music and learning how to make songs. Because you have a keyboard on the right-hand side. This is a piano accordion. So if you can remember anything from piano lessons back in the day, you can do a tune on the right-hand side. And on the left, you have a bank of buttons. They're in the cycle of fifths, which means you can just do oompa, 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 with ones that are next to each other, and get 3 chords that go together very nicely. And so I learned again to make songs on the accordion. And then I found a Hammond organ in a charity shop. I was very fortunate. They're really light compared to pianos. You can carry them along if you've got somebody else. And then I started making music that way, because I liked making songs when I was at university. I didn't like performing them. I'm daunted by that. But I liked making them. And then I just kept going on because I found it very satisfying. And I had friends who are better than me at making music and make music more deliberately and with more focus. But I think because of my varied tastes, I aim to make music in more genres than those friends do. And so they are very good at what they do, but I am slightly good at a wide range of different things. And I think I prefer that way to actually getting good at anything in particular. But yes, learn the accordion. That's my top tip. You're actually the first person who's ever had anything to say about the soundtrack, which I thought was a pity. I think the soundtrack is astonishing. Not astonishing good, astonishing, which in some ways is better than astonishing good. I'm really pleased with how it turned out. Like a lot of Trans Theft Horso, the soundtrack for me feels like something that could have been made for me. And if somebody else had made it, I would be bouncing up and down with excitement, but wishing that I had made it. I mean, I have been pleasantly surprised recently to find other people do like Trans Theft Horso. But the soundtrack, I feel like, so far, I have been the greatest enjoyer of the soundtrack. And that's fine. One other thing on the music, I never considered an alternative to making the music. Because I thought if I'm writing it and I'm making the art, of course I'm making the music. Who else could possibly? Where would I go to find music that is the music for this specifically? A friend of mine asked me a few years ago if I'd be interested in making music for their next game. They are currently working on and about to release the final episode of Because We're Here, their World War I otome visual novel, which has music that already existed in the world. But they asked me if I'd be interested in doing a soundtrack for the game they do after that. I'm very interested, But that got me really interested in the idea of making music for my own games, and I sort of expanded my palette, thinking if I could make music for somebody else, that would be more of a challenge, because I would need to make it less annoying and more deliberate to fit their vision. And I think that sort of opened up my way of thinking, oh, can I try and make some different types of music for my vision? But I think I am possibly a monomaniac in that I like to do all the things. And while I love the idea of working with other people, and I really hope I can at some point, you really need to all understand the vision.
I think that it makes the finished thing more distinctive if one person has created every part of it. I think that I think Trans Theft Auto especially is like a very distinctive, very like memorable game in its. It has such a distinct personality, and that comes from its creation and how it was put together.
My housemate Ava says that playing that Trans Theft Horso is basically a Ben Swithen simulator, and that if you've met me, you've already played the game, and if you've played the game, you've already met me. And that seems very peculiar, but I won't fight this notion.
Trans Theft Horso is a top-down adventure RPG, developed and published by Cow Children Games and released on the 15th of July 2025. It is, according to the Steam description, quote, a colourful western fantasy adventure to save trans joy. Adric Belfonte embarks on a happy nightmare into the wild and bewaffling west. Explore the maddening desert, defy the admirals, ride the animals, fight the haters, and save the missing hormones. A feverish Wild West fantasy in full colour. End quote. But what does all that mean? Well, in Trans Theft Auto, you play Adric Belfonte, young, optimistic and possessed of a horse where their heart should be. As the opening cinematic says, quote, a live and living horse that still beats and gallops today. You're alive, Adric, and kicking inside and out. Adric is also trans, or non-binoir. They aren't loud and proud, nor quiet and shamed. They just are. You have seemingly recently moved to the city to assist your wheelchair-bound brother, Rudolph. In the opening sequence of the game, you discover that Rudolph's regular delivery of hormones has not arrived. Subsequently, Rudolph tasks you with an unwelcome mission: to head out west to uncover the source of the delay, and ideally, to recover the hormones themselves. Adric is not exactly disposed to do so, the West being, by reputation, a hostile and inhospitable place to individuals who self-identify like they do. Nevertheless, they do so, heading out into the unwanted unknown entirely selflessly and entirely fearfully. What follows that is a weird, wild, and colourful comedy adventure that takes the framework of a certain flavour of top-down RPG, think Earthbound or A Link to the Past, and filters it through several decades of silly and surreal British comedy like The Goon Show, Monty Python and The Mighty Boosh, with a modern sensibility and overarching theme that is entirely unique and entirely Ben's own. Trans Theft Auto is a fun and funny game that throws many, many obstacles, hurdles and haters at our protagonist, testing their resolve, testing their character, personhood and identity, all in service of the core idea of the game. That idea of gender gladness. As Adric is tested, so is the thesis of the game. As Adric persists, endures and flourishes, so too does the thesis of the game. As Ben touched on, gender gladness is something anyone, cis or trans, can engage with. It is taking pride in who you are, and drawing affirmation of that from interacting positively with the world around you. In Trans Theft Auto, gender gladness is a core part of you, and how you understand and interact with the world around you. It is an idea, it is a theme, but it's also a gameplay system. Again, as Ben touched on, you can boost your GG stat from a number of side activities, petting animals, playing the piano and so on. These things boost your gender gladness stat, but, and this is a philosophically important point, have no effect on the gameplay. They have no effect on the gameplay because that's not the point. Some things are worth doing just for the sake of them. Some things are worth doing just for fun. Now, speaking of fun, let's talk about the look of the game. Trans Theft Auto is a delightfully wonky looking game. It looks like a game made on a budget by one person because that's exactly what it is, and that is entirely to its benefit. It's hard not to warm to something so obviously human. It's the character portraits that get me. Each character, and there are many characters, has their own, and each is a different flavour of slightly unreal or knowingly garish, some with comically over-furrowed brows, elongated chins, squat heads, or wild hair in wild shades of pink and blue. The absence of modern polish is noticeable. It looks rough around the edges even compared to those older console RPGs, let alone the high-spec reinterpretations of them that we are now accustomed to seeing. I do think that lends it a certain timelessness. You can look at this game and not really be able to tell when it was made. It doesn't look like a 2025 game. It looks like it could have been made any time since the 1980s. I think it's telling that Ben refers to themselves as a maker of, deliberately, computer games, and to Trans Theft Auto as such. This, and Ben's previous game, By Hyacinths, are, in their low-bit simplicity, reminiscent of the products of the early days of PC gaming. Ben mentioned Jill of the Jungle, and I think that's a good reference point here. Made, amusingly, by Tim Sweeney, yes, inventor of the Unreal Engine, CEO of Epic Games, and custodian of Fortnite, Tim Sweeney, Jill of the Jungle is an MS-DOS platformer from 1992 that is blocky, chunky and bright, visually doing what games of the era had to do and provide just enough for your brain to latch onto and to let your imagination do the rest. It looks like an imaginative sketchbook come to life. And that, to me, is what Trans Theft Auto looks like. To paraphrase Ben, it doesn't need to look beautiful to be a beautiful thing. Another area where Trans Theft Auto differs from other modern top-down action-adventure / RPG games is in the gameplay. There's a number of recognisable systems here, but all subverted in playful ways. And fundamentally, the game works like this. You arrive in a discrete area on the world map, then meet a character who will assign you a particular task, the completion of which will grant you access to an item or route that unlocks the next quest. You might need to locate a certain character, find some way of retrieving some money, smackaroos in the in-game lingo, catch 5 escapees at the local capybara farm, or in the early game, free a dog from an underground prison. Generally speaking, making progress is simply a matter of finding your way, finding the thing, then returning that thing to the NPC that asked for it. In this, Trans Theft Auto shares common ground with text-based adventure games, in that there is little friction to progress. Moving forward is mostly a case of just following the story rather than overcoming particular mechanical challenges. This is not a problem, as that text, that story, is the true highlight of Ben's game, but we'll come to that in a moment. When the game does present you with some quote-unquote game, it's light touch, but welcome, and always there to make you smile. There are collectibles hidden all over the place. Boxes of hormones, fried eggs, those collectible playing cards. There are simple stealth sections, a fishing game, and my favourite, that section where you play a recently deceased cow flying in the clouds, and must navigate various obstacles in order to collect enough battenbergs to ascend to the moon. Speaking of battenbergs, a phrase I'm endlessly grateful for Ben for allowing me to say, there is a pancake making minigame accessible from the main menu. In this, you play out an animation of the pancake making process before choosing from a number of fillings ranging from the logical to the truly deviant. I won't spoil all of them, but a few for your consideration are lemon juice, salami, jam, cream, sausages, flour, cheese, an entire orange, invisible blessings, broccoli, tomato soup, and yes, a slice of battenberg. In any other game, you might say this adds nothing, but in the case of Trans Theft Auto, it just does. Being in keeping with the whimsical spirit of the game, in celebrating little things that don't change much but certainly mean a lot, it is another critical part of the whole. Lastly, on the gameplay, there is, on occasion, turn-based combat, but not really like any turn-based combat you've ever done before. Your list of moves changes depending on the opponent, and those moves are comically ineffective or just plain comical. Use your fists, use your words, go for the family jewels. These are some of the options available to you. There are no RPG systems that feed the combat, no levelling, stats or buildcraft. Like the other gameplay systems, it's not there to provide an obstacle to overcome or a challenge to master. It's there as a vehicle for more of those large, vivid character portraits. It's there as a demonstration of the subversion of expectations, and it's there as a vehicle for the writing. The wonderful, surreal, and often hilarious writing. Ben's characterisation of themselves as a writer first is an idea supported by, well, everything in Trans Theft Auto. This game is very clearly the work of a writer. You don't get this amount of writing otherwise. But if you, like me, are someone who shudders at the thought of a text-heavy RPG and your A button cowers for fear of your vengeance, then let me assure you, you are in very safe hands here. The dialogue and textual interludes of Trans Theft Auto are so florid, lyrical and playful that I read everything and skip nothing. This is uncommon. I think you can tell this from our conversation and from Ben's general character, but it's there in all of their work. From their videos, to their music, to their games. Ben loves language. Ben loves words. Ben revels in the sound and feel of words, in the rhythm and balance of syllables, always seeking to find unusual combinations and collisions that create an internal logic of their own that is funny in a way that can't be described. If the very title of the game didn't clue you into that, take note of these. Some characters in the game are Grunculus, Diana Festive, Chimblechamp, Lemuel Pancake, Linus Breastwell, The Eminent Goose, Bodgerby, and my beloved Pickwick Marie. And take note of these locations. Skelletown, Big Thumb Falls, Lake Lakey, Dumb Crambo and Lil Crambo, Cowhardy Gorge and Horsepop Gully. Now, I did not take enough notes of the dialogue, and my short-term memory has long since melted away in the void of sleep deprivation, but a couple that I seem to have been moved to take screenshots of are of this observation of a train by Adric. More fun than a fish, as active as a turtle, more rectagonal than a cat and bigger than most dogs. And this one, from aggressively anti-trans authoritarian antagonist Alabaster Clay, in reference to Adric, creeping through our toilets like an unflushable diaper. People die of such perversions. Tellingly, there is writing everywhere. Every item has a bit of dialogue attached to it. Every bookcase a witty aside. Throughout the game, you find and collect little trading cards of each character in the game, each adorned with a short description of them. Some are clues, and some are just for fun. An evocative reference to gender, sweet glistening gender, like honey, flowing through the streets back home, stands out to me. As does the throwaway line, if these beds could tell tales, those tales would be uneventful and repetitive. Easily missed, as it is triggered by one bed in one building in one tiny part of the game. I read everything in Trans Theft Auto. As I mentioned earlier, I'm pretty bad for skipping dialogue, for hammering the A button to get back to running, jumping, hitting, or whatever primary verb a game relies on. But I don't do that here. That would be a disservice to Ben and their remarkable command of language, which, as I noted earlier, exists to me in the lineage of classic British surrealism. Consistent in tone and quality and quantity, the writing is the reason this game wins the Most Amazing award. But not just for those reasons. The writing wins it for Trans Theft Auto, for how effectively it delivers on that central thesis. Gender gladness. Taking joy from the world. Celebrating the differences. Adric is not haunted or traumatised by their identity. Now, of course, drama is conflict, and it's fairly common in any drama concerning gender identity to present the internal struggle to reckon with one's identity as the core narrative hook. But that's not the case here. Adric knows who they are, and the game presents a vision of what comes after. What if a trans character was the hero of an RPG adventure? What if the world tested their resolve, but they were not a victim? What if that hero was different, unique, but wanted the same things that most protagonists want? What we often want. To help out, and then just go home. In Trans Theft Auto, identity is a problem for certain characters in the game world, but it's not a problem for Adric. They grow in other ways. And that's a key part in why Ben's game hits with me, and slightly more importantly, with the judges at Amaze. Now, let's talk to Ben one last time, to find out more about their game, what it is like to win that award, and of course, the best fillings for a pancake. we should talk about your experience at Amaze and your win. So first, the experience of being selected and being present at the event. How did that all come together, and what was it like being there in person?
Well, how I got there is I went to my friend Ike Bentley, who I mentioned, who made Because We're Here, had told me, oh, you should submit your game to Adventure X. And they told me that on the basis that if I was accepted there, I would take them along, so we could both go to it. And so I had never really considered submitting games to anything. And the Adventure X was in November. And when I was there, a couple of people said to me, oh, you should submit your thing to Amaze because it's a festival of games and playful media, and we think that they'd like your stuff. It turns out they were correct about this. They did like my stuff. And I loved the idea of a festival of games and playful media, because what is that? What isn't that? How broad is that? It's very broad. And so I submitted to Amaze, knowing it was a very prestigious thing in the world of indie games and in the world of the world. And then I heard that there were over 400 applicants and only 25 or so spaces, and so I just thought, this is not going to occur. It's very nice that I was able to submit, and I love the idea that someone who is really passionate about indie games will play some of my game to see if it's worth considering as someone to invite. So I thought, wow, maybe a few people on their panel are going to play some of my game, and I feel honoured by this. And then they invited me to Germany. About 2 months ago, I got an email saying, oh, you've been nominated. I hadn't really realised that to be invited was to be nominated for awards. And you're invited to Germany. And my first thought was, oh, that's incredible. What a pity I'm not going to Germany. Because I don't go to places. I don't like holidays. Because if I go on holiday, which I try to avoid as much as possible, I tend to spend my time thinking, if I was at home, I'd have my computer and I could just be creative and get on with things. Why am I walking around this city or relaxing by this pool? This is terrible. This is the worst thing I could possibly do. But then within 24 hours, I thought, I could go. No one's stopping me going. I haven't been on a holiday. I haven't been overseas since 2001. I haven't been on a plane since 1995, which is a long time. That's older than many people are in the world. And I thought, actually, if I say no to this, when will I ever have an opportunity in my life again? And also, I think I have made my life quite small. I think this is something I said in my acceptance speech. I have made my life a small thing, and that's probably why I have so many recurring dreams about almost going on holiday and then missing the plane. I'm really hoping the fact I've now gone on a plane will make those dreams go away. I'm hoping so, because I felt like I was closing off opportunities, and I felt like I'd put my life into a sort of managed decline. Which is not great, really. It's a little disappointing. So I was astonished, and I couldn't believe that the prospect of going there was a real thing. And for a few days I thought, this is exactly like those dreams I have where I say to people in the dream, oh, it's funny. It's just like that dream I have. But this time it's real. But then every time I wake up. And I was expecting that for months. I thought, this is a really long dream. That's how I wound up at Amaze. And I didn't know what to expect. I thought I can sort of speculate about what the Amaze experience will be like, but I know I will get there and I'll go, oh, this is nothing like I expected. It's not like a real place. It feels like a level from a game, and that might just be that I'm not familiar with architecture from Germany. But I do think that Crematorium Wedding, which is where it is held, is a very unusual place. And the vibe and the people and everything, it is a step outside of the normal world. It's like a step outside of the real world, or finally stepping into the real world and outside of the humdrum life. Not that there's anything wrong with a humdrum life, but when you're there, you feel. Well, I'm an introvert. I'm not good at talking to people very much at all. But I felt like I could talk to everybody, and anybody you talk to just is interesting. They're keen. They've seen wonderful things that they're excited about. they are on a holiday, and you can say to anybody who is there, what sort of games do you make? What sort of games do you want to make? Because of course, there are people who are exhibiting their games. There are people who organise it. There were a great number, I think 80 volunteers I heard at one point. I don't think it's 80 all at once, but it's a lot of volunteers, and all of them are interested in making games as well. And I didn't want to neglect the volunteers, just letting them be helpful NPCs. I thought, no, these are people. These people are valid as much as I am, if not more so, because they're really putting in the hours here to do loads of practical things. Whereas I've been very fortunate to be honoured with an invitation. So I was very keen to meet as many volunteers as I could, because they all make games and they're all studying making games. I met 3 people who said they didn't make games. I met a number of people who started saying that but said but I met 2 people who specifically make music, and they said they are not game makers. That's fine. If they want to make music for games, I count that as making games. And I met one guy with a really good hat. He was he was a video games journalist who had flown over on the same plane as me. I know this because I complimented his hat on the plane, and then I saw him a few days later at the festival. I went over and said, "You still have a very good hat." But yes, he's not interested in making games, but he had a great vibe. Okay. He seemed like he could be played by Ralph Fiennes, and I don't say this lightly.
That is a higher compliment. Did you meet Tim Rogers, the host?
I did. He's very likeable. He has a fascinating, very dry humour and an incredible tuxedo, which I get the impression is not his usual garb. I got some photos with him, but they were on my camera, which has a stupid lens that is really difficult at focusing. So I have some amazing, very blurry photos, but he comes out very well in those photos. Yes. We met on the night of the awards.
Now, speaking of the awards, you won the top prize at Amaze, and that is called the Most Amazing Award. And
yes,
according to Amaze themselves, that is pitched like this. The grand prize of the Amaze Awards goes to the most relevant, forward-thinking, interactive and playful content. We premiere the best work overall, in terms of art, innovation, music, story and interaction. The prize is dedicated to the masterpiece of the award selection that shows us a path we never walked before. Now, previous winners of this award include Despelote, No Case Should Remain Unsolved, and Still Stand. So, to put you on the spot, why do you think Trans Theft Horso won?
I don't know, and I find it fascinating and bewaffling that it did, but I'm not going to argue with them on this. I do think that my game is fortunate that it aligns quite well with specifically how they describe this award. I think that as a story that is very lively and playful, but also about gender gladness in a troubled world, it does fit well within, if they're looking for a relevant, forward-thinking, interactive and playful game. And I think this game is full of stupid things that I have put there because I was amused by them and because I don't really know what games are meant to be. Because I have not played as many games as most people who go to games festivals, not by any means. And so I would think I want to have a thing here where the cow that got hit by a train earlier on, I feel bad that I killed it off, so I'm just going to give it a little extra, an extra scene just to pass time between the scenes, where you get to fly as the flaming spinning cow around the sky and try and collect Battenberg cakes held by balloons and then try and settle on the moon. And just sometimes I think the game needs that, because otherwise this poor cow has been hit with a train, and I don't want this to just be a moment of hilarious animal violence. I want this to be an animal that is not overlooked beyond this point. So, and I think the fact that I've been thinking like that, which is not the practical way of thinking in terms of what does the audience want, what makes this a good game, what gives this unity of time, place and purpose, I think that means that I have inadvertently made a more playful game than most people would aim to. I was talking to someone who had introduced me when I did a talk earlier in the day. I I did a talk on puppet shows and video games and why they are alike. And I met the guy who had introduced me again at an underground club in Berlin, which is the kind of thing I had imagined would exist in Berlin, and they really do. And they're the sort of thing that you wouldn't see in the UK. But I ran into him again, and he was speculating on why Trans Theft Horso won. And he ventured that I making it was both joyful and earnest. And I thought earnestness is a very odd word. I think that is very serious and a bit joyless. Unless you're thinking of the Ernest movies in America, which are almost unknown in the UK. I love them. They're so good. They're incredible.
I'm familiar.
I'm glad. My housemate and I are obsessed with the Ernest movies. We discovered them 2 months ago. And so when I was described as earnest, I thought, oh, absolutely, wow! Yes, absolutely. But I don't know whether I agree, but I find the idea that I have an earnestness and a sincerity behind this might be onto something, because these are very silly. This is a very silly game, which is very ridiculous and deliberately annoying at times. But I think it is not purely a sugar rush. I think maybe it is because there is humanity to it behind that. But I don't know. I have very low self-esteem, so I don't go to things expecting to win glorious awards, and so it winning and this being presented to me as a reflection on my character was very strange to me. But it feels like it is not just that I have made a game and happily I have accidentally made a game that ticks the right boxes, so much as there is something in the game there is a vibe in it that is beyond just what it is. But once that's the case, I find it's almost impossible to analyse or scrutinise. I'm glad people like it, though. I really feel vindicated for spending 2.5 years pouring many, many hours into this. Because it often felt like a magnificent folly. But now it feels like a magnificent folly.
What does success look like to you for Trans Theft Auto? Do you have any sort of like metrics for what success would feel like for the game going forward?
Going forward, I have no idea. I'm wondering the whole time what success would feel like. I always imagine it's lots of people play the game and write reviews. So far, that hasn't really happened. I feel like I'm as successful as you can be while having very few people ever having played the game. And so it's an odd position. I don't know where to go from here and how you can go from a maze, which feels like the top of the tree in terms of you've made an incredibly weird game that is not a very commercial game. There's no acknowledgement you can get beyond a maze that I'm aware of. I have been applying to various other things in the hope that I can go further than this and sort of I don't know. That's what I'm struggling with at the moment. I applied to a games convention that was looking for people to speak recently, and I thought, I feel like I'm not a famous person, and normally they get famous people to speak, but I think if I don't start trying to apply for things that I won't plausibly get, because as established, I'm not good at guessing what I can get. If I don't start seeking opportunities to sort of be helpful in the community, or I don't want to say put myself about, that's very vulgar. If I don't start applying for things that it seems unlikely that people will want me for, then I won't know. So if I can go to more festivals and conventions and what have you, I have two prospects coming up soon, one in Glasgow, one in Amsterdam, which are seeming very likely. And I get to go back to a maze next year. I get to go back to Berlin, where the food is so amazing. Because having won, I get to be on the awards jury.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it feels like having stepped quite a long way out of my comfort zone by actually going to another country, I have now expanded the extent of my comfort zone. if you have any suggestions on what the heck to do next or how I can look at success, I'm all ears, because at this point it's just,
There is an open call to the listeners there to play and review Trans Theft Auto and to write in, and to
write in, get in contact. I'll talk to anyone and I'll listen to anyone, and I am always glad of any suggestions of what the heck next.
Well, there you go. Can hit Ben up on social media to suggest what to do next.
Yes, I'm Ben Swithen, or Benjamilian. That is with one L, like Maximilian, on various social media. I am the only Ben Swithen in the world and the only Benjamilian in the world. And yes, that is my legal name.
Well, thanks, Ben. You've covered my last two questions there, which is about what you're doing next and how to engage with you online. Is there anything else that you would like to shout out on the show now, ways that listeners can engage with you online?
People should check out my YouTube because there's many fun and ridiculous videos on there, and I know that's a very silly way of describing them, but I feel like I'm quite pleased with Passiontide and the Laird of McDonald's on there. Oh, and the Laird of Das Laird von MacIver. So I went to Germany. I do not speak very much German, but I had lots of absolutely useless phrases which I had learned because I had recorded a song in German a while back, Das Laird von MacIver, which meant that I was not able to cope by myself in a shop when I was in Germany, but if I needed to ask anyone to bury me under a layer of topsoil, I could. So check out my German language song there. I would also say, try out my Bandcamp if you like the music in Trans Theft Horso, and even if you don't. I recently put out, to celebrate the return of 2 episodes of the Daleks' Master Plan, my favourite Doctor Who story, much of which is missing. I re-recorded an album I made about that yonks ago, and I think it's got some good tunes. And I made an album an EP called Happy New Loin, which is celebrating bottom surgery and other gender-affirming surgeries, because I never hear people singing about bottom surgery, and I think that's a pity. I also never hear people singing very much, certainly not anything with gusto, about menstruation. I'm not the right person to write those songs. I hope somebody does. There are some topics that just feel like there's so much of them in the world, why are we not singing joyfully and merrily about this? And the only other thing I would shout out is, not myself, just go and look at the nominations and the winners for Amaze, because there are incredible games on there. I was absolutely convinced that all 4 of the other games in my category, Peppered, Skate's Story, and I'm going to blank on them now, which is very terrible, Sire, and Dream Meditation Job something, long title which I can never remember. And the most beautiful game that I saw when I was at Amaze that absolutely astonished me is called Phonopolis, and that came out on Steam today. That's the day we're recording this. You should check it out. That's one of the most aesthetically astonishing things that I have seen, and you should gaze upon it with loving eyes, is my top tip.
One last highly important question. There is a pancake making minigame in Trans Theft Auto. What are the best or the most deviant toppings that you can put on pancakes in that game?
A lot of what is included in there is facts from my life, so the majority of things in there I have tried in pancakes. I have not tried tomato soup in pancakes, although there is another meal you can create in the game where you can. But battenberg in a pancake, I have tried this. I love battenberg cake, I love pancakes. It's really dry. You've got to put cream on it, and then you start to question how healthy it is. So I think you can have anything in pancakes. Salami Milano and cheese work pretty well in a pancake. If you are going to have a savoury pancake, always put black pepper in it, because that is the savoury sugar. It makes the whole thing taste deliberate and not like you've made some weird accident.
So many great recommendations from you on this show, but I think that might be the peak of them. Ben Swithen, thank you very much for joining me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. We should do this again sometime, if I ever accidentally prosper magnificently in another way.
Trans Theft Auto 2. I'll see you there.
Hooray. Goodbye.
And that is a wrap on this episode of Dialogue Tree. My thanks to Thorsten and Matt from Amaze for their time and insights into the thing that they run. Learning more about Amaze, the work they do, the breadth of experiences they cover, and the scope of the platform they provide to creative and experimental digital work has been eye-opening, and I feel deeply stupid to have not been aware of it prior to the last few weeks. I will be following everything that Amaze does from now on, and I will be covering that in some capacity in the future. And my thanks also, of course, to Ben Swithen for their time, their music, videos, and this wonderful, spirited game. I've never played a game like it, nor been moved to think about gender identity and about the trans experience in the way that Ben presents. Now, I talk about this next point a lot on the show, so forgive me for flogging this long dead horse, but I am a very normal and very boring cis white man. Now, I can't change some of that, but I can at least attempt to expand my worldview, to become a more empathetic and understanding person. With Trans Theft Horso, I am grateful for having had the opportunity to do so. And I'm equally grateful for having had the opportunity to talk to an artist as immersed in the joy of creation as Ben. Creating stuff, making something from nothing, and leaving something behind. Well, this is all that really matters. And in this light, their attitude and approach is inspiring. Now, you may have also noticed that Ben provided the intro to this episode. Now, in addition to being a writer, musician, clothes maker, and general boundary breaker, Ben is a freelance songwriter. And if you need a jingle, synth pop odyssey, or rock opera for your podcast, project, or gender revolution, you should hit Ben up. Ben took my vague, airy description of what I wanted and made something that both exceeded my vision and expectations incredibly quickly. So if you need anything similar, I encourage you to check them out on the Fiverr platform. Links will be in the episode description. I hope this episode has inspired you to check this game out. But if you do need any further convincing or impetus to do so, it is currently Pride Month. So I will simply suggest that, while we should support trans voices all year, now is just a slightly more visible time to do so. Trans Theft Horso and its, quote, astonishing, end quote, soundtrack are available on Steam, and in the UK at least, the game is £9. In the words of the game, near the end, one character says, "Regrets for aspiring losers." Don't be that person. Give this game, this award-winning game, a chance, and you won't regret it. You may even, perhaps, prosper magnificently. Thanks for listening. In the episode description, you can find a link to the show notes, which includes information on everything discussed on the show today, including links to Amaze, Trans Theft Horso, Ben's other work, and the wonderful soundtrack to their game. The music you've heard throughout this episode was from the original soundtrack to Trans Theft Horso, composed by Ben Swithen, and available to buy on Steam and Bandcamp. The artwork for Dialogue Tree was designed by Pixel Benny, and you can find the show online at dialoguetree.cc. Talk to you next time. Take it away, Ben.
Trans Theft Horso. Ha-ha! The world is short of hormones, so you travel to the west. The kind of thing that curls your beard or makes you grow a breast. The game is not a musical, the menu is a song, and if you've heard it all before, you sing along. Trans Theft Horso. Trans Theft Horso. All Wests are wild, but this one's even more so. You can ride a henny, you can even ride a cow. What else did you come for anyhow? I came for gender glad. Trans Theft Horso. Trans Theft Horso. Any minute now, you can play Trans Theft Horso.